which is how to spot predatory journals. Right? So this is again very important when you're putting your research paper and you're choosing your journal. You should do very good background verification of the journal before putting your paper, because that is your effort and your money, right? So sometimes they charge some processing charges, right? So you're putting your effort and your money, handing it to a journal. So you should make sure that that journal is correct for your work, right? So few things that you can look at, right? So Scopus is a database, right? A lot of times the journals that you're looking at are Scopus indexed or SCI index, right? Which is Web of Science. Here I'm showing you the examples of Scopus, but you can also look, you'll have find the same details in Web of Science as well. I'm just showing you what you should be looking at, right? When you're looking at a journal, right? So for example, for Scopus, right, it is free. Scopus preview is free. Anyone can search for a journal. So here I've just searched for, and this is a good journal, right? So that there's no controversy here. I just want to show what are the details that you get. So Nature Physics, everyone knows, is a good journal, right? It has been covered from 2005 to 2025, right? So we should always check how long has the coverage been, right? So the more established journals or the good journals have been there for quite some time, right? So the longer they have been around, the more reliable they are, that they'll not probably be predatory, right? If there's a journal which started only a couple of years or started getting covered only a couple of years back, right, then there are more chances that it could be predatory, right? All what I'm saying are the red flags. Right? It does not mean that a journal which was started 2 years ago is predatory, right? I'm just saying that there is a chance that it's a red flag, and you should be careful. Right? It could still be a very good journal for all you know. Right? You have to look at other things as well. Right? Another thing is that this ISSN number. So every journal has a unique ISSN number, right? And on the website, the journal website will show that ISSN number, and Scopus will show the ISSN number that it is indexing, right? So sometimes it happens that the website shows another ISSN number, not the one indexed in Scopus, right? Even though the name of the journal seems to be the same, right? So that is a case of hijacking, right? So you should be careful to not submit in that other ISSN, because your article is not going to be covered by Scopus. Right? Scopus is only indexing the ISSN which it mentions here, right? So if any of the journal the ISSN is not matching this one, then it should be a red flag for you, right? Another important thing you should probably look at, and this again depends, but if there is a journal, let's say of let's say biophysics, right, and it has articles of geography and history and archaeology, right, in the subject area, right, then you should be careful that that journal might have some issues. Uh, so what happens, right, if they have out of scope articles, Scopus, maybe it is still indexing it, but at some point it doesn't re-evaluation and then removes the journals. And it also removes all the articles, right, that came in the journal. Right? So that affects, right, you, because your effort gets wasted, right, and your money also gets wasted. Right? And that article still remains in the literature, so you cannot publish it anywhere else, right, because then it will come under plagiarism, right? So it is a big loss for you. So you should be careful, right, not to fall into such traps, and do this kind of background check quite, right, put some effort into it, right? One more thing that you should look at is whether the journal has had any spike in publications, right? So this means that suddenly last year or last couple of years, the number of publications in the journal increased by a huge margin, right? So I've given you here some examples, right? So one of these journals, right, it had like 100-fold increase, right? From 12 documents, it went to 1149 documents, right? And then this journal was removed, right, from Scopus. It no longer appears there. I mean, this journal appears, but the 2025 articles no longer appear there, right? So all that 1149 articles are no longer appearing in Scopus. So all those people, they lost the work they have done and the money that they spent for putting that article, right? And that money was not negligible. Right? It's like around $300, and which is some 30,000 rupees, right, for one article. So you can imagine how much money has been lost, right, because of this particular journal. And you have many such journals, right? So you'll see many journals with 100x increase, right, 10x increase, right? And all these journals will be evaluated by Scopus sooner or later, right? And many of them might actually lose their indexing, right? So you have to be careful. If you do your background check, you know that these journals, it's probably better to stay away from those journals, right? And not publish in ones which have a huge spike, right, in the recent times. You have another source called hijacked clone journals, right? So this is work by Anna Abalkina, right, who has kind of created a database of all the journals which are hijacked and cloned, which she has found out. So this repository can be found out in this link that I've given. You can also Google for it, hijacked journal checker. You'll find the details, right? So that is also a good place to go and see if that particular journal you're looking at is not there in that list, right? If it's there in the list, then it's better to avoid that journal, right? If a journal, right, promises you, right, that just pay the processing charges and we'll get your article published in 2 weeks, if you have such a small publication time, right, it is usually a sign of a predatory journal, because it's very difficult, right, to get any meaningful review done in a short span of 2 weeks, right? Even finding reviewers, getting them to review, then asking you to respond and everything for a journal takes time, right? At least a month, right? Even if in the fastest of cases, right? So someone promises to publish your article in 2 weeks, it's probably a predatory journal, right? So you should be, again, it's a red flag. You should be careful of that, right? Some journals, they have country specific rates, right? So you'll have rate for Indian authors, as in this example, right? For Indian authors is 35,000, right? And this is the same journal, by the way, which got which 1,049 articles were removed, right? For Indian authors, it was charging 35,000 rupees, right? And for international authors, it was $700, which is about 60,000 rupees, right? So there's a huge difference, right? Almost double for the international authors, right? Now, there's nothing, if it's an international journal, right, there's no reason for having only India specific rate, right? It could have a rate for low, low and middle income countries, right? But why only like one rate for India and why one rate for everything, especially for an international journal? If this was an Indian journal, right, I can still understand, but this is an international journal. You don't expect special rates for Indian authors. You have many journals like this, right? Sometimes they have the rate for Indian authors is 2,000 rupees, and for international authors it's about 15,000. Right? When there's such a huge disparity, you have to be careful that it might be targeting a country, and it might be actually a fraudulent journal. Right? Again, it's just a red flag. Maybe there are some good journals as well, right, which have special rates for Indian authors and international authors. But again, you have to be careful, right? Most of the times, it is a red flag.